Good morning and welcome back to Live Without Limits. Your breakthrough starts here, the podcast where we dive deep into personal growth, emotional healing, mindset transformation, and discovering the strength that already exists within you. Today's episode is titled Behind Every Strong Person is a Story. And I want to begin by saying something important. Strength is rarely both from comfort. Most truly strong people did not become strong because life was easy. They became strong because life forced them to survive things they never imagined they would have to endure. And that's something that I experienced personally. Growing up with a disability at a time when people with disabilities were hidden away and society did not recognize that its disability community existed or even guaranteed people with disabilities the right to an education or employment. Behind confidence, there may have been insecurity. Behind resilience, there may have been heartbreak. Behind wisdom, there may have been trauma. Behind independence, there may have been abandonment. Behind success, there may have been years of failure, rejection, or self-doubt. The truth is, we often admire people's strength without knowing the story that created it. We see the smile, but not the suffering. We see the achievement, but not the sacrifice. We see the confidence, but not the emotional battles they fought privately. And sometimes the strongest people are the ones silently carrying the heaviest burdens. So today, we're going to talk about how pain often shapes strength, why people hide their struggles, the emotional cost of pretending to be okay, how adversity changes identity, the connection between vulnerability and healing, and why your story matters more than you think. Because behind every strong person is a story that changed them forever. And let me give you a little bit about what my story is. I've already mentioned that I grew up in a time when there were no laws, but I also grew up in a very toxic, abusive family. And I was the middle child. And even though my younger sister was the one who instigated many of the problems, I was the one that was generally accused of everything that went on in the home. And I suffered terribly because of it. And also, another reason was because I was too independent for them. It's in my nature, because my natural behavior pattern is to be very outgoing and to find it easy to interact with strangers. But in my family, they wanted the control. They wanted to dictate who I was friends with, how I dressed, what I did, every little thing. And if I didn't do it exactly the way they liked it, I was constantly being abused and told I was worthless and I would never amount to anything. And what it did was it made me stronger, because what happened was, if you tell me I can't do anything, that's like waving a red flag in front of me and daring me to prove you wrong, because I was always determined to be successful and to be independent and to take care of myself, even though all my mother wanted for me was to live at home, keep her company, sit around the house all day and do nothing. And It's not in my nature and it's not in my personality to just sit around and do nothing and wait till the other person is ready to do something. So the first thing we're going to talk about is strength is often born through struggle. Most people do not wake up one day emotionally strong. Strength is usually developed through disappointment, heartbreak, rejection, loss, failure, trauma, loneliness, survival. Pain has a way of transforming people. Sometimes life puts people in situations where they have no choice but to grow emotionally stronger. And while strength is admirable, many strong people never ask to become strong in the first place. Some people become strong because they had to raise themselves emotionally, and I can attest to that personally. They lacked support, which was one thing I could say I definitely did not have in the home I came from. They survived toxic environments. They turned not to depend on others. Rather, let's say it this way. They learned not to depend on others. They experienced betrayal. They endured emotional pain quietly. Strength often develops as protection. You learn how to hide emotions, how to survive disappointment, how to keep moving despite pain. But surviving something and healing from it are not always the same thing. And many strong people are still healing from the things that taught them to be strong. This is one thing I can say, that because I never had a family to depend on, I learned to depend on myself, and I learned how to love myself and how to pat myself on the back, to do for myself what I was not getting from the people around me that were supposed to love me. And the sad part is they didn't know how to love because they never experienced it in the home they came from. And this is something that I've said over and over again. We are a product of the home we come from, and unless we decide to break the bonds and make the changes, those changes will never happen. So it's up to you to decide whether you're going to allow other people to control you or whether or not you're going to control yourself, because only you know what you're truly capable of doing. No one else knows. And what happens is, if you've got a parent that came from a troubled home, they're going to create that same environment because that's their comfort zone. And unless you want to remain in that comfort zone, or unless you are willing to break the bonds and break the ceiling and move ahead and live the best quality of life possible, it is up to you to decide what you are going to do. And I can tell you that often I would question as a child, why me? Why me? And I came to the decision that there was a purpose for why I was going through what I was going through. And only after I graduated high school and entered college and started to study psychology and mental health did I begin to understand and be able to break the cycle that was going on. And I found that the best thing for me was to keep as far away from my family as I could, because they were toxic. And if you change and your family around you does not change, there's going to be a breakdown in that family, because they will try to bring you back to the fold, because a family unit works because each of you react in a certain way and allow the other person to do what they're going to do. And if you understand what the rescuer, the persecutor, and the victim triangle is, because what that is you've got one person that's the persecutor that's going to constantly persecute you. Then you've got that other person that's the rescuer. And they kind of work together and play off each other. And the idea is to keep that third person at the victim level and really try to control their behavior, because it makes them feel better about themselves, because they are the insecure ones. And it makes them feel powerful instead of weak by taking control over someone else, especially if that person has far more potential than they will ever have. The hidden stories that people carry. Everyone you meet is carrying a story that you may know nothing about. That person who seems confident may have battled years of insecurity. That person always is helping others that may secretly feel emotionally exhausted. The successful entrepreneur may have experienced painful failure before finding success. The person who makes everyone laugh may privately struggle from loneliness. People become experts at hiding pain. Why is that? Because many people fear being judged, appearing weak, burdening others, and especially rejection. Vulnerability, so they smile, they keep going, they show up, they perform strength. But emotionally, pain does not disappear simply because someone hides it so well. Some people have mastered survival while silently suffering. And this is why compassion matters, because you never truly know what someone had to overcome just to become who they are today. And let me tell you this thing, because my mother looks at when I left home and moved to a different city for a job as running away. And yet, she will never admit that at one time when I was 12 years old, I climbed out of the window and I desperately wanted to get away from that home environment because I knew how toxic it was. I knew it was unhealthy. I knew that the best thing I can do was get away from it. And in those times, you didn't have child protective services. You didn't have any place that you could call and ask for help and tell them what was going on. And I can tell you this much. I remember being 12 years old and crying and upset and had to be at the door of the school when it opened. And I remember going to school and someone saying to me, "Who hurt you? I'll go beat him up for you." And my answer was my father. Now let me tell you this much. Today, if you go into the classroom and you're crying and you're upset and the teacher asks you who's hurting you, they will go to a social worker. They will call Child Protective Services, and you will get the help that you need. But back then, if you didn't get the help, so when you see a lot of those kids that are lonely, it's probably because you don't know what's going on in the home and what's happening to them and why they are doing exactly what they're doing. It's because they learn it in the home. It got them what they wanted then. It will get them what they want now. And that is exactly what they will do. So understanding exactly why things happen the way they happen will help you understand. This is why when I entered college studying psychology and mental health and then going into rehabilitation counseling, not because I wanted to work as a therapist or a rehab counselor, but that I wanted to know what the laws were and what my rights were. And this is something that I actively took part in for many years. And remember, back when the Olympics came to Atlanta, the Atlanta IOC refused to bid for the Paralympics, and it was the disability community that got together and brought the Olympics to Atlanta, and I was involved with that. And then the head of the IOC went and changed the bylaws. So after 1996, any host country that bids for the Olympics is automatically bidding for both and automatically having to prepare for both. So remember this, that people end up doing things they do professionally because of what happened to them early on in their lives. So now let's talk about the emotional cost of always being strong. One of the hardest roles that people play today is becoming the strong one in the family, the strong friend, the dependable leader, the person everyone leans on emotionally and consistently. Being strong can become emotionally exhausting. Strong people often feel like they cannot break down. They must hold everything together. They always need to be okay. Asking for help means weakness, and over time, emotional pressure builds internally. Some strong people become emotionally numb. Others experience burnout, anxiety, depression, emotional isolation, chronic stress. Because strength without emotional support eventually becomes heavy. Even strong people need rest, comfort, understanding, healing, emotional safety, and one of the healthiest things a person can learn is this: you do not have to suffer silently to prove your strength. Now, I'm going to say this, that for me, when I was very young, it was so important for me to be able to take care of myself that I refused to ask for help. And then later on, I learned it's okay to ask for help, that it does not mean that you're weak. So understanding who you are and where your strengths lie, where your weaknesses are, and how to find someone who compliments you is one of the best ways to help you get exactly the balance that you need in your life. Vulnerability is part of real strength. Many people confuse vulnerability with weakness, but vulnerability actually takes enormous courage. It takes courage to admit you're struggling, express emotions honestly, ask for help, confront painful memories, let people see the real you. Real strength is not emotional suppression. Real strength is emotional honesty. Strong people are not people who never cry. They are people who continue moving forward while allowing themselves to feel. Vulnerability creates healing because it removes emotional isolation. When people finally open up about their pain, their fears, their struggles, their trauma, their insecurities, they often discover that they are not alone. And sometimes the strongest thing you can say is, I'm not okay right now. That honesty creates connection, and connection is deeply healing. Now, think about it. There are support groups for grief counseling, because many a times when you lose someone that is almost like your soulmate, that it's a deep heartbreak. And until you find a support group where you can get the kinds of people that have experienced exactly what you've experienced and can talk about what it took to help them get where they are, and how just hugging them. You know, if you watch an actor, a really good actor, they can convey through their body language, not even just words, what they're feeling. All you have to do is look at their face, look at the way they hold their body, look at their eyes, because you can see sadness in it. Often we don't realize that how we communicate. We think communication is all the words that we hear, but that's not true. If you've ever watched, and I know I just said this, but it basically needs repeating. Actors are very strong and trained in how to convey emotion just by their facial expressions. I remember once I was sitting in one of those little phone booths where they take the pictures, and I was deep in thought, and someone came in and he did something to the camera that it started taking pictures. And the very first picture that it took, you could see I was so deep in thought that and you can tell what I was thinking about because it was written all over my face. Understanding that in candid moments, when someone does not realize that something is going on around them, what do? And, you know, I can remember sometimes being at a bus stop and there being people around me, and I get very glassy-eyed, like I'm staring, but I'm so deep in thought that I'm semi-conscious to what's going on around me. And I can remember someone saying, oh, she's staring. And yes, I'm aware of what's going on around me, but I'm so deep in thought that I'm not thinking about what's going on around me. And someone else can misinterpret it simply because they don't know what's going on in my head at that moment. Your story shaped who you become. Every experience in your life shapes part of who you are. Your struggle taught you lessons. Your disappointments changed your perspective. Your hardships developed resilience. But many people carry shame about their story. They think nobody would understand. My pain doesn't matter. I should be over this by now. Talking about it makes me weak, but your story is part of your humanity, and often those parts of yourself that you try hardest to hide are the very parts that connect you to others so deeply. Your story matters because it shaped your strength. It shaped your empathy. It shaped your wisdom. It shaped your resilience. And the experiences may one day help someone else survive theirs. Sometimes your survival becomes someone else's hope. Every day we wake up, we are very different than who we were the day before, because every experience, everyone you interact with has influence on you, good or bad. And remember this, if you're in a toxic environment, you need to get out of it. The best thing you can do to help yourself is to realize that you will not heal as long as you stay around those people who will continually abuse you constantly. Healing the strong person within you. And if you spent most of your life being the strong one, this segment is for you. You deserve healing too. You deserve moments where you don't have to hold everything together. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to carry everyone emotionally. You can simply exist honestly. Healing begins when strong people stop believing they must carry pain alone. Here are some ways to begin healing emotionally. Stop suppressing your emotions. Stop feeling that are... Okay, let me say this a little bit differently. Your feelings are valid. Ignoring pain does not erase it. Allow yourself to rest. You are not a machine. Mental and emotional exhaustion are real. Talk to someone safe. Therapy, coaching, support groups, trusted friendships, or journaling can help release emotional pressure. Writing it down gets it out. And this way, you can look at it and you can see it. Practice self-compassion. Stop criticizing yourself for struggling. You've survived more than most people realize. Realize or release the need to always appear strong. You are human first. Not every moment requires performance. Acknowledge how far you've come. Sometimes we focus so much on what's still hurting that we forget how much we've already overcome. Take a moment to recognize your resilience. You survived things that once felt impossible. Recognize who you are. Recognize why. And remember, you can seek out someone for help. There are many groups out there. And one thing I did when I lived in Atlanta is I had the help book. And you can call, I believe that number is 511. And they are that number that can give you the resources on places to contact. Strength and healing can coexist. One of the biggest misconceptions about healing is that strong people shouldn't still struggle. But healing is not linear. You can be strong and still healing, resilient and still emotion, successful and still overwhelmed, wise and still learning, confident and still human. Strength and vulnerability are not opposite. They work together. True emotional wellness happens when you stop trying to become invincible and instead become authentic, because authentic creates freedom, and freedom begins when you stop hiding the story behind your strength. As we close today's episode, I want to remind you this. Behind every strong person is a story of pain, a story of survival, a story of growth, a story of resilience. And if you've been carrying heavy things silently, I want you to know this. You do not have to carry them alone forever. Your strength is admirable. but your healing matters also. You are allowed to rest, to feel, to speak honestly, and to ask for help so that you can heal emotionally, because true strength is not pretending you're unaffected by life. True strength is continuing to grow through what tried to break you. So thank you for joining me today on Live Without Limits. Your breakthrough starts here. And if this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who may need the encouragement of today. And remember, your story is not proof that you are not weak. It is proof that you have survived.